I'm delighted you could participate in our excursion. To avoid possible mayhem, please pay attention. Standing may cause vertigo. Don't do it. Keep your arms and legs inside so you don't fall out the window, especially the rear window. And finally, smoking and alcoholic beverages are strictly for the birds.
All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our first site I'm pointing out tonight is the former home of Key West's most famous resident, Robert the Doll. Now, Robert the Doll was gifted to a young boy by the name of Robert Eugene Otto when he was 4 years old by his Bahamian nanny. The doll stands 40 inches tall, is stuffed with a wooden wool called Excelsior, and dressed in a sailor suit. Now, many people believe that the nanny put a voodoo curse on the doll when she gave it to Robert because she was let go by the Otto family against her will. Well, the boy and the doll became fast and furious friends, so much so that the doll assumed the boy's first name. From that day forward, Robert Eugene Otto was simply known as Gene Otto. Well, Gene and Robert would be playing in Gene's room. Gene's mother often heard a second voice coming from that room, and she described that voice as being very sinister and demanding. So she'd go into the room to see what was going on, and she would find Gene's toys broken, scattered all over the room. She asked Gene what happened, and his reply was, "Mommy, Robert did it." Well, folks, that was Gene's reply for everything that went wrong in the house. When the servants were locked into the closet, Robert did it. Repairman's tools come up missing? Yep, Robert did that too. So after a period of time, Mrs. Otto grew tired of this. She banished the doll to a closet in the attic to her. Gene grows up and travels the world. He becomes a famous artist. In Paris, France, he meets a beautiful concert pianist by the name of Anne. The couple marry. They return to Key West to the Otto family home, where Robert was very patiently waiting. Gene insisted that the doll be brought down from that closet, and he would paint with his best friend seated by his side. Rumors flared that Gene had become abusive towards Anne. On a wellness check, the police found Anne beaten and locked in a closet. They asked Gene what happened, and what do you think his reply was? Robert did it. So Anne ordered the doll back into that closet. Folks, the doll would escape that closet. He would be seen sitting on a chair looking out the front window of the room where that closet was located, watching everybody going down the street. People would cross over to the other side of the street or avoid the block altogether just to avoid his beady little eyes. Well, Gene died in 1974 and is buried in our cemetery. Upon his death, Anne sold that house and left Key West for good. Then she left Robert in that closet. The next set of homeowners reported strange things happening in the house. They found Robert in the closet, and they put two and two together and donated him to the East Martello Museum, where you can go visit him. If you do, be very respectful. This doll has rules that must be obeyed. And if you do not obey his rules, he will put a curse on you. He gets over 1,000 apology letters a year, folks. His former home today, however, is a very beautiful guest house called the Artist House. It's coming up here on your left with the lavender shutters. This corner tower, the room at the very top, is Robert's old room, which you can rent nightly for around $400 a night, if you dare. Now, our first burial ground on tonight's journey is the Memorial Gardens of the St. Paul Episcopal Church coming up on our left. The residual haunting of children playing around a stone statue of an angel has been recorded in this corner right here. Other people have recorded the laughter of those children. This land once belonged to John W.C. Fleming, a very wealthy landowner here in Key West, gifted to the church upon his death by his widow with the condition he remain buried here forever. This church is the fourth one to be built on the property. The first two churches were lost to hurricanes and the third one to a fire. But Mr. Fleming is still under that church somewhere. Yes, we are the Doom! In fact, folks, there's a headstone for Mr. Fleming in the floor of the church. Now, in the late 1800s, the cigar manufacturing business was huge money here in Key West, and one of our wealthiest manufacturers was a man by the name of Francisco Marrero. In 1889, Francisco builds a beautiful home to entice his love, Enriqueta, to be his bride. It worked. The couple married and they went on to have 8 children. Francisco's business took him back and forth to Cuba quite often, and on one of his trips he died under rather suspicious circumstances, mourning the loss of her husband and tending to 8 children now with no father. One evening, Enriqueta hears a on her front door. She opened that door to reveal another woman dressed all in black, just as she was. That woman, folks, claimed to be Maria Morel, Francisco's first wife from Cuba, whom apparently he forgot to divorce. Well, Maria felt that his estate should go to her. She challenged it in a court of law and she won. Enriqueta and her 8 children were thrown into the streets of Key West with only the items they could carry. They were all dead within 6 months. But standing on the top step of her front porch, she made a vow. You may take away my home, my spirit will never leave. Here on your right is the beautiful Morero Mansion. Today it's an adults-only guest house. Guests staying there have seen the ghost of a woman passing through the wall, separating 2 rooms that were once the children's nursery. And in another room, they still see her brushing her long dark hair in the mirror as she awaits Francisco's return. Now, folks, on your left is our beautiful La Concha Hotel. Built in 1926, at one point this was the tallest building in Key West. 13 people have leapt to their death from that rooftop observation deck, which has since been turned into a spa. On New Year's Eve 1982, there was a party up on that 5th floor. A young employee cleaning up was wheeling a cart of dirty dishes down the hallway. He backs up to the elevator and presses the button. He hears those doors open, so he steps backwards. He falls 5 floors to, yes, we are the new. Falls 5 floors to his death as there was no elevator. People staying in this hotel on the 5th floor still hear his screams coming from that elevator shaft. And they see a ghost walking towards the elevator before falling through the floor and disappearing. 2 very young victims of yellow fever lived and died in what is now known as the oldest house in South Florida. Today it's a beautiful museum, but it has been at this location since 1832. It was once the home of Captain Francis Watlington, his gorgeous wife Emmeline, and their 9 daughters. Captain Watlington was a politician going on business a lot, probably to escape the 10 females in his house. Yes, we are the new. On one of his business trips, though, yellow fever claimed the life of one of their daughters, and a second began to rapidly deteriorate. Knowing death was inevitable, she rocked that daughter until she drew her last breath. Ladies and gentlemen, here on your left, with the front porch, is our beautiful oldest house museum. Guests and employees alike still hear the sound of a rocking chair coming from a room where there is none. In this right-hand front corner room, Emmeline still rocks. Dr. Joseph Yates Porter, very important man in Florida. He was our state's first public health official. He dedicated his life to curing yellow fever since it claimed the life of his mother shortly after he was born. He was born in this green and white house here on the left in a room upstairs. 80 years later, he died in that exact same room. Trying to cure yellow fever, he would conduct quarantine experiments in his home, and many of his patients died there. Some years, more than 50 people would die inside this house. Today it is home to 2 bars. Employees working the first 4 bars have seen the poltergeist activity of wine glasses flying off of the racks. They've heard the residual haunting of music coming from unoccupied rooms upstairs. And in that very room where Dr. Porter was born and later died, we still feel a very strong, intelligent presence along with a really cold breeze. We still have a tormented Dr. Porter in our Porter Mansion. The Porter Mansion is home to 3 of those haunts I talked about during our introduction, ladies and gentlemen. Our next location is known to have all 4, and we are going inside of this location. If that makes any of you feel uncomfortable, you can stay out here on the trolley with Dave. Now, once inside of this location, you will have the opportunity to touch cursed Spanish treasure, if you dare. Now, take a look at the front of the trolley, folks. And there you will see a tower standing 65 feet above Mallory Square. That's a replica tower which you would find here in the 1800s. The original tower was about 80 feet tall. There would be a man positioned at the top of that tower watching our reef for any ships to wreck. When a wreck was spotted, a cry of "Wreck ashore!" would be heard echoing through town. Every wrecker would race out to that wreck in small boats called sloops. First one to arrive to the wreck was known as the master wrecker. They would salvage as much of that cargo as they could, bring it back here to Key West where it was auctioned off to the highest bidder. The master wrecker always got the biggest portion of that auction. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in the 1800s, a lot of those seafaring people did not know how to swim. So imagine that you're on a boat that has just crashed and sinking and you don't know how to swim. You're going to grab onto anything you can in an attempt to save your life. So there's no wonder a lot of the artifacts in this museum are believed to be spiritually possessed. Now, folks, as we make this turn, I want you to turn to the left, and you will see one of those beautiful sloops. Coming up on your left is up. Yes, we are the Dim. Here is our beautiful sloop Mary. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I do not recommend taking ours out for a Sunday sail. I don't think she'll get you very far as she's missing a bottom, and I hear that's kind of important for a boat. However, like most other things in Key West, our sloop is now more chicken coop than anything else. Now, David will bring the trolley safely to a stop. He will get off first. I will follow. Those of you who are brave enough to come inside can follow me. Those of you who are staying on the trolley, do not worry. I'm going to leave my microphone on so that you can hear the stories. And just as a reminder, when we are off of the trolley, the masks can come down. I just ask that you be respectful of the people around you. We are in this together.
There you go. Enjoy.
All right. And ma'am, I'll leave my microphone on for you. Are you staying on?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I'll only go stay.
Looks like it's just you and me.
All right. Head on down and take a seat.
Okay.
Head on down, take a seat, and make yourself comfortable.
Boo. I should have got Darren and taken.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I do apologize that there are no speakers in this room, but luckily, your host tonight has a very big mouth, so we should get along just fine. Now, for those of you who are seated on this side of the room, this next question is for them because you have the answer right there. Now, you guys happen to be in somewhat of a Key West rarity. So who on this side of the room can tell me what is so unusual about where we're at right now?
Basement.
You're in a basement. Now, as you notice, Key West is very close to sea level and we're getting closer every year. That being said, all of you right now, your heads are 1 foot below sea level. That's why I'm standing, thank you very much. Now, in a town that battles floodwaters all the time, why would we want to have a basement? Storage, yes. Preferably cold storage. Before the invention of refrigeration, basements, since they're always cooler, were used as ice houses. So they would be filled with giant blocks of ice to keep our food and our beer cold. But they would also be used as morgues, and the ice would keep those bodies preserved until they could be buried. You think it smells kind of funny now. Just imagine the smell in the middle of the summer when you have 6 dead bodies in here and that ice smells. Lovely. Now, the activity at this particular location has increased dramatically over the past almost 13 years. It is believed to be tied to a single event that happened in the early morning hours of July 1st, 2008. Around 4:30 in the morning, the motion alarms in the tower above were set off, but the alarm company did not notify the authorities. So around 9 a.m., when a young employee came to open up the museum, he climbed to the top of that tower, as he always has, to raise the United States flag. That particular morning, however, when he got to the top of the tower, he found a young man lying in his own pool of blood. Now, a few days go by and that employee is closing up the museum. And as he's walking, he notices a shadow moving along the wall. Well, thinking it's his shadow, he stopped moving. But that shadow didn't. It continued, climbed the wall through the ceiling towards the tower above. The employee described the shadow figure as having very long arms and legs that were kind of reaching out for him, and that it moved in a very quick spider-like motion. Well, the young man found at the top of this tower was tall and lanky. And many people believe that when he passed, a part of his spirit attached itself to this location and formed that shadow figure, because that shadow had never been seen before this tragedy. Well, the employee saw that shadow figure a lot. Always made him feel very uncomfortable. But he saw it so many times that he started talking to the other employees about it. And he was shocked to find out that all of the employees had had several encounters with that shadow person. So those employees decided to do what a lot of us do when we are faced with an unpleasant situation. They try to make light of it. So they decided to give him a name. And they very affectionately called him Daddy Longlegs. Folks, we still see Daddy Longlegs today. Now, a few months go by, those tower alarms go off again. This time, however, the alarm company does notify the authorities, and 3 officers and the general manager come and check things out. Don't find anything wrong, so they reset that alarm and they leave. Exactly 1 hour later, those alarms went off again. Those same 3 officers and the general manager returned. 1 officer stayed outside by the car. 2 officers and the general manager come inside the building. They did something you should never do in a horror movie.
Separate?
They separated. Folks, the manager climbed to the top of that tower. 1 officer stayed on the main floor directly above us, and 1 officer came down here. The officer who came down here, after checking behind every artifact and in every nook and cranny, turns to go up those stairs, and he comes face to face with a full apparition. He said that the apparition seemed oppressed, like it had something to get off of its chest, but it never spoke. The 2 of them made eye contact. The apparition turned and disappeared through that wall right there. The officer who stayed on the main floor, he heard simultaneous banging coming from all 4 walls. So he radios out to the officer waiting by the squad car, and he asks why there were so many people here banging on the outside of the building. That officer reported back that there was nobody here and that they were alone. And then let's not forget that manager, the one who climbed to the top of that tower. Ladies and gentlemen, that man came down petrified, as white as a ghost, not even able to speak about what he encountered up there. To this day, that man is still unable to talk about it. But very shaken up, he goes over to the alarm panel to reset the alarm, and he notices the date. It was July 1st, 2009, the 1-year anniversary of this event. Folks, the alarms went off 3 more times that evening, but no intruders were ever found.
on the anniversary of that event every single year. These alarms go off multiple times. On the 10-year anniversary, July 1st, 2018, the very tower that stands above us got struck by lightning and caught fire. So you can come back to this location on July 1st if you want to. You're not going to see this ugly face. I take that night off, thank you very much. Now, I did say on the trolley that you would be able to touch cursed Spanish treasure. In order to do that, you need to follow me up these stairs here to my right. As you go up those stairs, you're going to see the names of a lot of the records that we've had throughout the years. But I want you to pay close attention to the landing at the top, because that, folks, is where Daddy Longlegs likes to hang out. So ladies and gentlemen, follow me.
You sure you want to go up there?
I'm gonna get up here and meet Diddy Long, they drive on that ball.
And don't worry, the cold chill you feel in this room is AC. It is a very cool building. This is also a really, really good place to take a picture, folks. You will capture very, very strange things in this room. Several of our guests have captured daddy longlegs. Some have captured disembodied heads, orbs, shadows, mists. Strange things are caught in the pictures in this room. After our story, folks, I will show you the best place to stand to take pictures. But do we have everybody out of the cellar? Yeah. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, right here in front of me is a 64-pound solid bar of silver. Just based on the price of silver, this is worth $28,000 today. With the historical value, I'm sure this one is worth quite a bit more. We believe this bar of silver to be cursed because it has actually been on a total of 6 different Spanish ships that are all now sitting at the bottom of the ocean. Each one of those Spanish ships was trying to take this cargo back to the King and Queen of Spain. We know this to be true because after the story, when you come up to look at it, you'll see some Roman numerals up here at the top, and that's a serial number. They have the logs of the boats that this bar of silver has been on. We only have time for a story about one of those boats, however, and her name was Nuestra Señora de la Maravilla. In English, that would be Our Lady of Marvels. She was part of a fleet of 7 Spanish ships trying to salvage this cargo from a shipwreck the previous year right off the coast of Ecuador. In January of 1656, a very large storm came up and it spun that fleet of 7 ships around in a circle. Our Lady of Marvels was the tail ship. Her hull was pierced by the lead ship, the Capitana. Knowing that both ships were doomed, the captain of Our Lady of Marvels calls out to a Catholic priest, a man by the name of Father Diego, asked him to start taking confessions and issuing the last rites to the men. Ladies and gentlemen, there were 650 men on board those 2 ships. 45 survived. Father Diego and the 44 men that he blessed. Now, after sinking the 6th and final Spanish ship that this bar of silver was on, it sat at the bottom of the ocean for over 300 years before it was salvaged by a U.S. vessel and brought here to Key West in 1986. So you can come up, touch it, lift it. Those of you who do, keep this one thought in mind. The only thing not sealing your fate is the solid ground that you're standing on. Personally, you won't catch me dead on a boat with that bar of silver, and that pun is totally intended. So, who's brave enough to come touch the cursed treasure? Oh, yeah. You can touch it, you can lift it. If you want to lift it, hands down on the side, lift up from the bottom. £64, $28,000 worth of silver right there.
High five. High five.
We got a lot of great ones on this trip. Had very few touch it last time. Now, those of you who do not want to touch it, it doesn't bite if you come up to look at it. But those of you who want to take pictures, the best place. Oh yeah. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, there was a lady on one of our tours that was videoing me talking about that bar of silver. And you see the metal plate there to the right of it? She captured this orb coming down from the ceiling, going through my body into that metal floor. Now, and when she was showing me the video, I could tell where I was in my speech. And at that exact moment that orb went through, I had a cold chill just on one half of my body. A gentleman captured Daddy Longlegs standing in front of that corner cabinet over there with the gold curtains. When you look at his picture, all you see are the gold curtains until you zoom in. Then you see this very large, tall, black shadow with the most piercing yellow eyes I have ever seen in my life. You zoom back out, all you see are the gold curtains. Somebody explain that one to me. Now, the most active place to stand and take pictures is over on that side along the railing with their cameras pointing to the second floor. That seems to be the current active hotspot. Over the years, people have captured Daddy Longlegs, shadows, mists, and orbs. Now this tower is closed at night for safety reasons. It is open during the day. It is included with your admission to this museum. If you climb to the top of that tower, you get a fantastic oversight view of Key West. And on a clear day, you can see all the way up to the reef. If you want to come back during the day and check out the museum and climb that tower, just let me know, because on the trolley I do have cards that will give you discounted admission to this museum. Now, we do have a lot of ground to cover tonight, so in just another moment we'll be exiting these doors here behind me. But as you guys go down the steps to get back on the trolley, I want you to aim your cameras to the top of the tower. That's a very good place to capture orbs. And later on tonight's trip, we are going to be going by a place that is called the Field of Orbs. And when we get close to that, I will let you know so that you can have your cameras ready. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when this tower was struck by lightning in 2018, the tower and the museum itself were closed for 10 months for repairs because it sustained such heavy damage. And on July 1st one year, one of our other drivers, Howard, was sitting on the trolley while there was a tour going on downstairs, and the air conditioner right outside the front door burst into flames. I avoid this place like the plague on July 1st. But, as I said, we do have a lot of ground to cover, so we'll go ahead and exit stage left and begin the rest of our tour.
You got that one, Dave? Thank you. All right. There's also some on the trolley as well. Yes. Especially if you touched it and you're going on a boat tomorrow. Okay, you're good then. Oh, you're fine, you're fine. I just don't want to lock anybody inside. Not a place I want to spend the night. No. This place scares me on July 1st.
Oh, I was afraid you got gobbled up.
You could have gone in. There wasn't that many stairs.
All right, now just as a reminder, folks, when we're back on the trolley, the masks do have to be up. Please help a ghost out. I don't want to lose my job.
got a text from Sarah inquiring about Dad. So I texted her back.
No, it's not unusual for cameras to work really weird in here, so yeah. Strange things really do happen inside this location.
Is that pretty cool?
Yeah, it's a neat building.
Alright, now ladies and gentlemen, as we're getting settled, wrecking was also very big business here in Key West.
What was
And one of our wealthiest
Traffic.
wreckers was a man by the name of Captain John Geiger. Now, Captain Geiger lived in the Audubon house with his wife and their 11 children. I guess there wasn't a whole lot to do in Key West back in the day.
No TV.
Right. Well, Captain Geiger was a harbor pilot and a master wrecker, but many people believe he lived a double life also as a plundering pirate because he was so wealthy. Well, folks, 3 of their children died of yellow fever. 1 of their children died falling from a tree in the backyard while his siblings watched. We still see a ghost of a man patrolling the grounds of the Audubon house, and it is believed that that's the ghost of the pirate Geiger watching. Yes, we are the new! Watching over buried treasure believed to be on the property. The Audubon house is going to be coming up at the next stop sign, not this one. It'll be on your left with the white picket fence. As we go by, folks, I want you to look at the second floor. The room all the way to the right on the second floor will have a light on. That's the nursery where 3 of their children died of yellow fever. Now there's such a feeling of dread and gloom felt in that room that they painted it a bright cherry color, changed the furniture, but they leave that light on 24/7. In fact, it's hooked up to a generator, so if Key West ever loses power, that light never goes out. Ladies and gentlemen, here on your left with the white picket fence is our Audubon house. And coming into view on that second floor is the nursery where they lost their 3 children. It's a very popular museum, and it's a very beautiful museum. I encourage you to come and check it out during the day. Alright, now ladies and gentlemen, our next story is about a decorated World War I hero by the name of Manuel Cabeza. After the war, he returned to Key West and he opened up a bar on the waterfront called the Red Rooster. He was so well liked in town that everybody simply called him Isleño, which meant the islander. Well, everybody in town also knew that Manuel was smitten with the very beautiful and exotic Angela. Angela was an Afro-Cuban lady of the night. She fell in love with Manuel and she gave up her night job. The 2 of them moved in together and lived as common law husband and wife. It was young love at its finest until Christmas Eve, 1921. When 6 men, members of a particular group that liked to wear white sheets and pointy white hoods, broke into their apartment, and they beat that war hero within an inch of his life. They wanted to make their point very clear that they did not appreciate the fair-skinned Manuel lying with the darker-skinned Angela. During the struggle, Manuel was able to remove 2 of the hoods and he recognized 2 of his attackers. So the very next morning, Christmas Day, with a ruptured kidney, he grabs his army-issued revolver and he hails a cab, drives through town searching for those 2 men. On Duval Street, 1 block to our left, he came up on one of those men, a man by the name of William Decker. At a stop sign, Manuel leans out of the cab window. He looks Decker square in the eye and he says, "Decker, this is how a man kills a man," and shoots him point blank in the forehead, dead in the street. He then jumps out of the cab, runs home to his wife Angela and waits. Sheriff Curry shows up with 6 Marines. They arrest him and they bring him to the jail. Folks, to your right is our Key West courthouse and somebody parking illegally. But if you look to the right of the courthouse, you'll see a white wall. The building behind that white wall is the old city jail. Still has the bars on the windows. Well, it's Christmas Day, so Sheriff Curry dismisses those Marines, tells them to go enjoy Christmas with their family. He leaves Manuel's cell key hanging in plain sight, and he leaves the jail unlocked while he goes home to his family. Those hooded cowards returned that night, driving down this very street with their headlights off. They walk into that open jail and they find his cell key. They open it. And this time, they beat him to death. They then take the lifeless war hero's body out of the jail. They tied him to the rear bumper of their car. They drug his body through the streets of town for everybody to see. They then drag him to the outskirts of town, where they tar, feather, hang him from a palm tree, and then shoot the already dead war hero. And in that exact courthouse, it was determined that the murder of Manuel Cabeza was not done by an organized group, but by individuals unknown. And in a town where everybody knows everything, somebody please tell me why on that day nobody knew a thing. Very angry, distraught Angela leaves that courthouse, walks a few blocks down the street to Bahama Village, goes to the cultural center, and she calls upon her Afro-Cuban descent and the practice of Santeria. She sacrifices a chicken, and mixing blood with bone, she calls out to the heavens, "Death to those who have harmed my husband." She vanished, never to be seen or heard from after that night. That was the bloodiest Christmas in Key West history. But it does appear that Angela did get her revenge, because local legend has it that all of those men involved in that murder died a very horrific death. In 2019, though, it took almost 100 years, folks, for that war hero to get the proper military recognition that he deserved. In 2019, the mayor of Key West, the Monroe County Sheriff, Manuel's 99-year-old great niece, and the military here gathered in our city cemetery, where Manuel was given a proper military burial and a new headstone. And you can visit that headstone during the day and pay your respect to a decorated World War I hero.
All right.
Thank you very much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, coming up in a couple blocks on your right will be our beautiful Key West Lighthouse. There's something quite unusual about our lighthouse. What was that? No, somebody said it. What was it?
It's not on the water.
Exactly, it's not on the water.
Oh,
Right here, ladies and gentlemen, is our beautiful Key West Lighthouse. This is our second lighthouse. This one was built in 1847. The original lighthouse was kind of at the end of the street where the southernmost point is now. That one was made of brick, and it was destroyed by the Great Havana Hurricane of 1846. The single most destructive hurricane ever to hit Key West, as that storm pummeled this island with sustained winds of more than 200 miles per hour. Today it would be a Category 5 hurricane. Well, seeking shelter in that original lighthouse was the keeper, Barbara Maybrady, and her 6 children. They survived, folks, as that lighthouse fell on top of them. But what those winds destroyed, those waves claimed. And that storm washed 5 of her 6 children out to sea. She went on to be the keeper of this lighthouse with her one surviving child, and she spent the rest of her years there. Now, in 1846, the only thing in this part of town was the original lighthouse and our original settlers' cemetery. That storm was not finished, though, with just destroying the lighthouse, folks. Wanted a whole lot more. That storm surge came in, it scoured the earth, and it disinterred everybody buried in that cemetery. Those 200-mile-an-hour winds then blew their bodies inland. So the next morning, when the town people came to check on Maybrady and her children, they found their loved ones dangling from the trees and the bushes. Not knowing who belonged to what body part, they gathered up those pieces in buckets and baskets, took them to the center of town, where they reburied them in a mass grave in what is our city cemetery today. Now, this part of town is known as South Beach, and it goes from our southernmost point all the way up to the White Street Pier. It has been used as a burial ground for centuries. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where the Calusa laid their dead. We have been finding bodies here for over 150 years. From 1823 to 1826, Commodore David Porter and his Navy were sent to Key West to battle the pirates of the West Indies. He would bury his fallen soldiers here to be buried on U.S. soil. And after our new cemetery was built after that hurricane, if you died of yellow fever, you were still buried out here to keep you isolated from town to help stop the spread of the disease. But picture it before all these buildings and resorts were here. You had soft sand, beautiful palm trees, and a fantastic view of that ocean. Not a bad place to spend eternity if you ask me. But folks, as recently as 1940, as they were laying the pipes for the new city sewer